This video is going to be a review of the rule of threes. The rule of threes is a rule for the thoracic spine to help with palpation. It breaks the thoracic vertebra down into three sections, to tell us where our spinous process is in relation to our transverse process. Now, the transverse processes are always going to be at the same segmental level of the vertebra that they're attached to. However, in the thoracic spine, the spinous processes can either be at, a half segment below, or a full segment below the vertebral body that they are attached to. For the rule of threes, T1, 2, and 3 are grouped. T4, 5, and 6 are grouped. And T7, 8, and 9 are grouped. We're going to start with those three groups, and then we'll kind of look at the last three, T10, 11, and 12, after. So for the first three in the rule of threes, T1, T2, and T3, the spinous process is going to be at the same level as the transverse process. The transverse process is always going to be at the same level as the body. Okay, so T1, 2, and 3 are going to be at the same level as T1, 2, and 3 transverse process. So when we would palpate that, we would feel for a spinous, we'd drop off into the spinolaminar junction, and then about a finger or so more lateral would be the transverse. The same way we did in the lumbar spine, we would push posteriorly to anteriorly to feel the spinous process move below our finger. So for T1, 2, and 3, the transverse process is at the same level as the spinous process. The next three are T4, 5, and 6. With T4, 5, and 6, the spinous process is going to be a half segment below the transverse process. If we look laterally, we can kind of appreciate on this model that the spinous process will almost be lined up with the superior body of the segment below. Okay, so for T4, 5, and 6, the spinous process is going to be one half segment below the transverse process. The next three are going to be T7, 8, and 9. For T7, 8, and 9, these spinous processes are going to be one full segment below the transverse process. So again, the transverse process is always the same segmental level, and the spinous process is going to be one full segmental level below. So if we look here, we can appreciate that the spinous process of T8 is at the same level as the T9 transverse process. Okay, so it is one full segmental level below. So T1, T2, and T3, those vertebrae are going to have their spinous process be at the same level as their transverse process. For T4, 5, and 6, the spinous process will be one half segment below the transverse. And for T7, 8, and 9, the spinous process will be one full segment below the transverse process. Going into the last three, T10, 11, and 12, these spinous processes are going to follow almost a reverse rule. Okay, so coming down, the first three were at the same segment. The next three were a half segment below, and then the most distal three were a full segment below. T10 is going to follow the same rule as T7, 8, and 9. So it's going to be one full segment below. T11 is going to follow the same rules as T4, 5, and 6, so it's going to be one half segment below its transverse. And then finally, when we get to T12, T12 follows the same rule as 1, 2, and 3, so its spinous is back at the same level as its transverse process. Okay, so for that one, we're going to go just out. Now, if we were palpating T7, again, T7 is going to be one full segment below. So we can almost find the transverse process and then go up a full segment. Okay, and again, we could feel for this by pushing posterior to anterior on the transverse process to ensure that we are on the correct spinous. When we push posterior to anterior, we'll feel the spinous move below our finger. To look at it a little bit more, perhaps clearly on this very technical drawing, again, T1, 2, and 3, the V is going to be our spinous, and it is going to be at the same level as the transverse. T4, 5, and 6, it's going to be a half segment below, almost between the inferior body of the same segment and the superior body of the segment below. T7, 8, and 9 is going to be one full segment below, to where the spinous process of the inferior vertebra, the spinous process of the superior vertebra matches up with the transverse process of the inferior. Okay. So say that one more time just to kind of understand it, because it can be a bit confusing. For T7, 8, and 9, the spinous process of the superior vertebra is going to be almost at the level of the inferior transverse process. Again, T10 follows the rule of 7, 8, and 9. T11 follows the rule of 4, 5, and 6. And then T12 follows the rule of T1, 2, and 3. So with T10, the spinous process is one full segment below. For T11, it is a half segment below. And for T12, the spinous process is going to be at the same segmental level as its transverse process.